Welcome to AlbanTalk3, and I'm very happy to have my esteemed and highly beloved colleague Jean-Guihen Queyras with me. Welcome, Jean-Guihen.
Hello, Alban. Wonderful to be here.
Well, I should not have to introduce Jean-Guihen because most of the people watching are cellists themselves. So everybody knows him. He's one of the most accomplished and most versatile cellists I know. I mean, he has done anything. He started as a cellist in the Ensemble Contemporain with Pierre Boulez, with whom he had a fantastic relationship throughout his life. And so he's at home in modern music. I love his Baroque playing. When I had to pick a Vivaldi concerto to play, I listened to your CDs to find out which one to pick. And the romantic repertoire as well. So he's at home in all the big pieces, but he's also a fantastic teacher and a chamber musician. So I have absolutely no idea how you combine that all. I'm hardly managing one thing, which is playing with some orchestras, but you do, and you on top of it, you play with the big orchestras as well as with the Baroque groups. So this is like two different pair of shoes. So how actually do you manage to do that? On top of that, you're a father, aren't you?
Oh yes, father of three, and but now they are, in the age where I am the one trying to get their attention, and not they are having so because they are between 17 and 23, so it's not the same as let's say 10 years ago.
But still, somewhere in the corner of your brain, you have to think of them. So you have your students, your career, solo chamber music, and the kids. So how do you do it? Do you have more than 24 hours like all the other people?
No, look. First of all, thanks so much, Alban. I've been fan of yours for many years, and so I'm very happy to be on your show, and thank you for saying such nice things. The thing about my versatility, because it's something that has followed me somehow everywhere. When I get interviews or things, it's a lot about this. And look, I think it's a question of temperament and also what life offered. I mean, I'm let's say by temperament, I'm somebody, I go with the flow. So I meet personalities in the music life that inspire me, and I like to learn from them, to try to follow their example. So that happened with Boulez, as you said, but also it's true. It's because I was excited when I was a student already about playing new music all the time. When I was studying somewhere, when I was in Freiburg studying many years ago, when I went to New York, and so whenever composition students would need how is it called in English? Versuchskaninchen, someone to try
victim.
Yeah, to someone to try the craziest things, they would come to me because they knew I would be excited to see how a cello can sound. Very differently than what we're used to. I always found this very exciting. Also, my second teacher, Ren Flachot, I met her when I was 11 years old. She was very much forward-looking and very much encouraging us to look at new repertoire, new playing techniques, and all these things. So it was also in my education that I got this. So that was one aspect. And then the love for chamber music, I think this I got also by temperament. I like to be part of something. I like to be part of a family. I like to be... I remember talking about this again. I have an expression in German that comes to my brain, where I talked to a colleague of us who said, "Oh, I'm not a Herdentier. I'm not. I don't belong in groups, And I said, "I am one. I grew up in a big family. That's something I like." So when I started to play music, also my first teacher, one of the things she did when I had my first cello lessons, I would spend the whole afternoon at the conservatoire, and she would give me my lesson, 45 minutes or something, and then she would put us in another room. She always had two rooms, and in the second room she would all the students, the pupils would have to sit together and play cello ensemble all the time, and that was so immediately I got this as a basic that music is about sharing and about doing this together. So that's the chamber music aspect. And then I kept this, and throughout my studies also, first thing I would do when I would arrive somewhere would be to look for chamber music ensemble, because I like this. Now, to finally come a little bit to answering your question, how to manage all this? Well, look, when I see young soloists, really soloists, and you know what? When I was their age, I was not a soloist. But anyways, when I see these guys who already, they are 20, 25, 20, and they are already jumping from one orchestra to the other, playing all these concertos and things, I'm very admirative of this. I could not have done this. I do have a career which is partly solo, and that's something that fits to me. When I started my career, I was 23 years old. I decided to join the ensemble of Pierre Boulez, the Ensemble Intercontemporain, and to play, to live the life of an ensemble musician, playing in a group, part of an adventure that I thought was very exciting. It was not just about meeting Boulez, it was about this, but it was also about meeting this group, very special group of musicians with incredibly alive brains, I would say. So Pierre-Laurent Aimard was there when I arrived there. Oh, yeah. But there are many others with whom I'm still in contact. Florent Beaufard, Sophie Chérier, really very, very fascinating personalities. And only from there and from my chamber music activities, slowly, solo engagements would come more and more, and here and there, and different ones, and I could go on like this about meeting Tabea Zimmermann and deciding to play together in some chamber music festival. We met, and then we said, okay, let's do something on a regular basis. The same with Isabelle Faust. I met her at this festival in Lyon. She was 17, and I was probably 23 or something like this, and we played together, and I was immediately I felt not only that she was a genius musician, but that the fit worked, and I loved creating something together with somebody that you admire and with whom you feel that the combination is fruitful, that it makes something that makes sense, and so on, and a bit like a snowball that rolls and things add up. And then the teaching, when I was already 23 years old, I started, my teaching started as an assistant for chamber music of, we have some visit. Hi there. So I started my teaching career as an assistant for Pierre-Laurent Aimard. He has a chamber music class in Paris, and I started there, and that was already so. Also there, I learned from Pierre-Laurent about how to talk about music, how to try to give young musicians inspiration for music, and that helped me for my future career as a teacher.
You started as a chamber music assistant, so cello teaching. Well, that's so unique about you, because you're not. That's why I like you so much as a player, because you're not in the first line a cellist. You're a musician and who plays the cello obviously excellently, but it's more about music than about cello. So that's why you did all those things. You're curious about music, and you're curious to collaborate, and I mean, just between us, those people you most collaborate with, Isabelle Faust, Melnikov, and Tabea Zimmermann, for me they're like among the best musicians ever. So it's I envy you very much, because they're wonderful. I mean, you deserve each other, but Tabea, I remember I heard once, we used to be rather close friends when she was still living in Düsseldorf, and I don't know, we were together in Paris, and she played a recital in Salle Gaveau, and I think that was the best string playing I've ever heard until now. Actually, it was so musical, like left hand, right hand, hard, brain, everything together. It's just unbelievable. And I got to play with her only once in my life. We agree she's the greatest.
Absolutely.
And we agree that you're just very, very curious and open-minded musician. That's why you go in all those directions. You don't feel the limit of any period, of any genre, because actually that's what it should be about. We should just want to be musicians. I mean, when young players write to me and they ask how to become a soloist, I always scold them, because that's like the most silly wish as a profession. It's not even a word, actually, soloist. I mean, what does it mean? To be famous. But if that's what drives you, I don't think you can survive for more than 20 years, because then it must get boring at some point, doesn't it?
I think in the end, it's about focusing more about the content than about the bottle. A young musician will come to you and say, so how can I become a soloist? So it's a bit like, there is this thing, which is a very interesting subject, by the way, but which sometimes leads to a lot of misunderstanding, which is projection. Or am I going to be, as a cellist, am I going to be loud enough? It is an issue. And of course, we do have to think about how our sound is going to have the right frequencies, so it travels through the room and it projects and all these things. We are a bit like actors who would be all the time concerned about making sure that they project every word, and then they just forget what they are talking about.
Exactly.
So and not only what they are talking about, but what it is about, what they are just doing. To project and to be, in a way charismatic, if it's the expression of something that roots deeply into what the composers gave us, into all the contradictions that were in this composer, into the contradictions that are in you as a player, and that will give what you play, an incarnation. It's about the substance. So what you want to say, what you want to express, what you want to, that is in a way is much more important. And I think then you will find the means to express it, I think.
Yeah, and I would even suggest to forget about the whole projection business. I mean, obviously we have to play with a core to the sound, but people forget about the projection, that there are different dynamics and colors and everything, and all you have to do actually is make sure you have enough overtones. So I'm on a lifelong crusade against people playing on the fingerboard all the time with this kind of wishy-washy bow speed, but you can actually afford, and you know it best because you're doing it, to afford to play quite softly, even with other people playing around. But by playing everything, at least mezzo forte and fortissimo, we encourage our co-workers, the orchestras and chamber musicians, to just move up as well. So everything is actually constantly in the same dynamic. I'm guilty of that as well. I think in 30 years, the last time I played the Dvorak concerto, it's the first time I ever dared to actually play the second theme really soft. I mean, I always thought piano, but actually when I hear myself, it's not really piano. It's a bit. I thought it was too much. And have you ever seen the manuscript actually of that?
Yes.
He says even pianissimo, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And I dared to do it. I mean, I missed the F sharp because I stayed on the D string, so it's like eighth. It's a bit flat, but it was still audible. I mean, you don't need to project there. The orchestra is playing out of our register, and they're not covering us there, and people are not aware of that. They're kind of in this mood of turning on the power and the muscle, and then play everything as loud as they can. And I think that destroys on the long term the music, but not with a piece like Dvorak, because it's indestructible, I guess.
Like in a great book or in a great movie, or whatever, it's going to be about the dramatic and the dynamic. as much as it is important that you sometimes just lean in the cello with all your body, you know, and that as it is just as important that you go and look for these very, very soft dynamics, and look for intimacy, you know, to create something like the light is dimming and you are creating something very, very intimate between the listeners and yourself, and yeah, I think it's very important.
But how do you talk them out of wanting to be soloists? Because how many students do you have? 12 or 6? Or do you have a full class?
No, I have a full class, yes. At the moment, I have like...
Respect. Whenever I teach, when somebody plays Haydn concerto for me, then I ask, what do you want to do with it? You want to play that in concert or you want to win an audition? Because I guess those are two different pair of shoes. But musically, for the audition, I would recommend them to play a bit more square than I would do in a concert, because audition is probably more about absolute perfection and a bit about being like this, and I don't like Haydn like this, so I would encourage them to be more like that, which could fail them in an audition.
We are here for a discussion, and I think it will be more interesting also for your viewers if sometimes we disagree. And here we have a little disagreement. And
Please.
It's about this notion, and I might be wrong, but unfortunately I feel strongly about it. I have been telling my students actually the contrary of what you just said, in the sense that if you prepare for an audition, just go to this music with as much heart as if it was to play for your grandmother and all your best friends. Because here is the thing. Well, two things. I think you can reach perfection. I agree with you, Alban, that in an audition, of course, one of the things you have to deliver is a very clean rendering and a very secure one, and you know, intonation, sound, and all these things. I do think that you can and you should reach this through, nevertheless, all the knowledge of what the music is there to offer. And I even think, Alban, that maybe not everywhere, but that more and more places, more and more orchestras nowadays will want, when they recruit young musicians, if they have the choice between one who is just showing that he or she can play the cello very well and impeccably, and the one that plays very well, but really is involved, offers something, talks, shows us all the dialogues, all the different voices that appear and everything. I think that most musical directors and things will go for this, for somebody who has to propose something.
Well, actually, we are not in disagreement. I probably didn't really describe well what I meant. Obviously, perfection, but also music. But whenever people play Dvorak or Haydn or these pieces one plays in auditions, I get so annoyed because they go through certain motions and traditions which are so common, as I just mentioned, the second theme of Dvorak being played out loud. So I'm afraid if I now work with the student really, and he has an audition 2 weeks later, if I tell him, okay, let's go really for the pianissimo. But then in this audition, he a bit too timid in that pianissimo, so maybe his chances to win this stupid audition is by just play it loud as everybody. So that's why I'm always asking, okay, when is the audition? Because at the same time, I'm really in a big contradiction there with myself, because I want the people to succeed, and I would like them to play the music as I think it should be done, in a more free and less constrained and less traditional way. So Haydn D major, for example, not in 8 but in 4. But I'm afraid if they go there and they play tam ta da ta da ti da dam ra ta 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 dam like this, that people are expecting a certain thing, and that the expectation anyway, audience or orchestra members, is so big that then they will fail. On the other hand, this is what I told the other time. I said, well, maybe it makes you stand out and then you get the job. So if you play differently, I've I don't know in how many auditions you have sat, but I sat in one. I played once in Colombia, and they asked me to sit in the audition. So I listened to 3 cellos or 4 cellos playing Haydn, and it's so boring. And I imagine it was like 30 cellists playing that all the same. So if somebody suddenly makes music and plays it differently, I would hope that the orchestra would go for that guy. But I haven't been in enough auditions to actually know if that's true.
2 things that come to my mind. You know, I'm really enjoying this conversation. 2 things that come to my mind about what you said, Alban. Number 1, specifically, for me, it's not about playing nicely and correctly or playing with, you know, fantasy and crazy ideas. It's about entering this world. What is the language of Haydn? How is he working with harmony? What does this harmony do to me when I go from this one to this one? Wow, there is a window opening here. How do I translate that into sound? How do I translate it maybe in timing? Although I think in Haydn, you won't do a lot with timing. You don't need a lot of timing. I think it will be a lot about sound, about bow speed, about all this. So, and to really construct, to see how the incredible poetry of this music is constructed. And then when you go to perform it, again, in front of a jury, there will be also the mindset. That would be also another work to do, to make sure that when you do that, you are going to go into all this poetry that you will have worked on about what you want to tell with this music, you know, all the love that's in there. I will dare to say that maybe one of the problems, let's face it, the sort of crisis that classical music has faced before COVID, you know, that people have been talking about for, look, Alban, already since we were young, you know, like the last 30 years, it's like, well, it's more and more difficult to get audience, or should I play shirtless, or should I do, you know, what do we do? So all these things. But is it possible that one of the issues that we sometimes lost track of the urgency that should be, the incredible love we should have for each note we play in the moment we play it? I don't know. It's just a thought.
I mean, it's true. We have to find the music, the love, and in every detail. But often the people who are the most fragile and the most beautiful, with the most beautiful ideas, then they lack the certain roughness. I'm afraid, and often I feel, or maybe that's a bad theory. You have much more experience than me, because I've never taught. I mean, I've only the silly masterclasses, but I've never got somebody from A to Z, and to really lead them. And have you made the experience that the great musician, like your best musician in the class, gets the best job? Or I'm sometimes afraid that the better the musician, the less he has the capability to be sometimes stupid, to practice stupid, and that sometimes the people who practice stupid get some jobs because they just nail the stuff, and it's like, oh, he nailed the thing, and then I hear how the nailed version sounds, and it's completely uninspiring. But the level of students you have is so high that you don't have to worry about that.
Look, I will go backwards. I have a very diverse class. Students with very different profiles. So yes, I have had students who have won IRD prizes and other competitions, and some who are doing a wonderful career, and I'm very proud of it, and I'm very happy about it. But as we mentioned, starting this show, not everybody is going to be the temperament to do the same thing. And really, you know, how do I deliver? How do I nail it? You know, and I find this process also super interesting. It's not that I'm like people shouldn't get the impression that I'm talking poetry with my students all the time. Not at all. It's so rewarding, this process of learning, you know, and of seeing how we are these strange sensorial machines who can learn, integrate something in the brain, integrate something, coordinate, put the fingers, how to know how to go from A to B. All these things I find very, very interesting and very satisfying work. I do not see that your better chance for an audition is to do a shortcut from this poetry, from this beauty, from what this music is about. When when you apply for a teaching position, you play a recital and then you teach a few students from there in front of the jury, and then you have a conversation with them. And funny enough, interestingly enough, one of the students had played Dvorak, and I taught him what I had to say about the Dvorak, talking about why I thought he could find something more convincing this way, also about technique. And then one of the jury members asked me, so it was very interesting, I liked your teaching on the Dvorak, but would you be ready to teach it differently if you know that you are preparing the student for an audition? Absolutely. And you know what? I knew my chance to have this job was at stake, but I thought there is no way I can lie about this. I said, no, I would not teach
compromise.
him. I would educate. It's not a question of principle. It's, a little bit maybe. That's about what I said before, that I think I want to maybe, hopefully, give my little contribution to a music world that is not focused on delivering or on nailing, but on going again about, wow, what did these composers, what did they give us from their soul, from their brain, from their flesh when they were composing this, and how can I bring this to life? And in general, auditions, concerts, recordings, whatever, build your technique on your inner ear, on your inner imagination, and then find the technical, let's work together on what can be the technical solutions to bring to life what you have inside you. But first, look at what you have inside you.
Have you ever done an audition? Have you played an audition, an orchestra audition?
Actually, when Ensemble Intercontemporain, it was a proper audition. We had to play excerpts of Schoenberg and other things.
Yeah, but did you have to play Haydn, D major, and Dvorak?
I had to play Prokofiev Symphonia Concerto, second movement, Dutilleux, Bach, Sarabande from the sixth. So, they wanted to see also, how we can play classical repertoire.
Do you remember the feeling playing that audition?
I have to tell you a little bit the story. I'll try to make it short. But I heard about this audition. Actually, I have a brother who is a wonderful violinist, Pierre Olivier, and his teacher at that time, back then, was violinist in the Intercontemporain. And the position, I was studying in New York at that time. And then I get a call from this teacher of my brother. He says, there is this opening. I think you should audition, because he knew my playing and he liked it. And he said, I think you have the profile. Boulez likes to work with young musician and then he gave me a little tip. He said, one thing which is crucial for Boulez is to feel that you are in the music from the first to the last note, and that you have in mind the whole orchestra part. And interestingly, we were playing everything solo. So the whole Sinfonia Concertante without piano, just by yourself. He always did this. Boulez never wanted to have this piano accompaniment. That Boulez and this jury is interested to see how you are going to deliver and to nail, but they are interested to see whether you are really in the piece you are playing from the beginning to the end. Yeah,
but the mindset, I think, to go into an audition like that is quite different to an audition like, let's say, Freiburg theater, whatever, opera, orchestra or so. I mean, because Boulez is one of the greatest musicians of our time, and to play for somebody like that, obviously, it might be intimidating, but at least he really wants to see you as a musician. But yes, because I wanted to, there were three questions. One is, I think you can quite quickly answer. One of my patrons, Vincent Liu, would like to know how you managed to get this beautiful sound for Brahms E minor.
The
in your
recording with
recording.
Alexandre. Alexandre Tarot at the piano, and well, thank you so much. This was not easy because, in general, I have found in my experience that recording piano and cello is probably, it stays for me the most challenging combination, even more in recordings than in concert. The amount of sound in some of the Brahms writing on a modern piano, and the mass of it, the density of it, sometimes doesn't allow for the cello frequency to really develop. And you were talking about the overtones before, Alban, and sometimes some of these overtones will get a bit trapped. We did have to adjust to play a little bit on how do we find a good balance and yet a good perspective between cello and piano.
But would you, I mean, I don't know that recording, but did you do something different to other people? Did you go maybe, well, I often, whenever somebody plays it for me and I see that they're going on the C string on the fingerboard, like doing this kind of vacuum cleaner sound, and going like kind of pauschal. I don't know, but what is pauschal? Pauschal is a German word, and it means kind of all in. I call it the pauschal sound, the all in sound, and that could maybe that's how it's normally played, and maybe you did something different. I mean, I think he means mainly the opening. I mean, he loves the whole recording, but he was especially going on about the opening line. And I know that I'm often not happy with the opening line because it's too obvious and too boomy, even though actually it's just piano, isn't it?
Then let me take 2 minutes, Alban, to go, you know, as you were doing this, I will take my cello for a second, and one issue that I always come back to with my students or in master classes, you know, is ask yourself, how much bow do you need? How much bow do you want to use?
Thank you.
And yes, and because what I'm telling them is that very often using more bow is actually, by doing this, you are actually not taking in consideration the mass, the substance of your sound, of your arm. You're not respecting it, by the way. So it's a bit like, you know, if an object has more density, you cannot move it around like this, like if it was something very lightweight. So you lose substance very often by giving too much bow. And so I think two things about this opening. So the one thing will be to learn, and a lot with, I think pretty much with all of my students, we go through this, is getting to feel, getting to know the body of your sound, and the body of your sound is your arm, you know, and to practice to feel the body of your sound. The other thing I want to mention, because the other thing that you were sort of making fun of, is that by doing this, what do? You always give the same amount of bow. And one of the main tools we have for phrasing is also the amount of bow. You have a first breathing of 2 bars, you know, and when you want to give 2 bars, you want to give these 2 bars an arch. So obviously here we go to the second bar. And already there, if you do want to be able to develop to your second bar. That's already a first breathing, and then the second set of two bars, obviously, because of the raising to the F sharp, we will go a bit further. If you can hear, don't play a flageolet.
Yeah! Thank you.
So, and then as you see, in terms of the amount of bow, I guess the top of your phrase is the G there, and then here you barely need bow. You can play with this much bow.
But look at you. What you did right now, you barely used bow for the whole phrase. I mean, you used maximum half a bow, and once you use maybe 12 centimeters, then 14, then 10, and I think that's why probably Vincent was drawn to that, because you did not use this. I mean, you used your brain and you didn't go pauschal all in, but you had an incredible bow distribution. You went quite deep, because if you do this, I mean, now with a stupid thing, if you're here, obviously the sound, I think it sounds like a vacuum cleaner. So if you go more here, you cannot use much more than that, otherwise it's going to be fortissimo. So automatically, but I think, I don't know if you ever thought about why that is, this whole full bow thing. I think it comes from learning the cello in the first 2-3 years. The teachers, I don't know if you ever taught people in the first 3 years. So the beginning teachers tell them, use the full bow, because a beginner goes like, and then they want, use more bow. So it sounds a bit nicer. But then later, after 5-6 years, one should go back. It's not always, but you can see it even with great musicians. And in orchestras, you see them using violins using the full bow, and then they're surprised that they're much louder than the rest of the string ensemble. So this distribution of bows doesn't seem to be taught much.
It's an issue that I find very interesting myself, and that's why I like to talk about it with my students.
Well, that's where the music lies. I mean, it's as if any cellist will tell you he loves the cello because of the human. It's the closest to the human voice, and they like to sing, blah blah blah. But then it depends on what singer. I mean, not just some all the time, but we need like a lead singer and words. We don't have the words, but we have to create the words, and the words are obviously not always the same like that, but we shape something, and if we do this, there's no chance. We're like a person who has a hot potato in the mouth or something. So but it drives me nuts, this or something like if they do that, it's beside any musical point, and it's as if you don't understand the musical language. But I've never been in my life that much interested in sound. Like sound. For me, sound obviously is important, but for me it has an importance of maybe 30-40% maximum. The rest is what you do with it. And with some people it seems like sound is 80% and then or 90%. Also conductors, they produce the sound, but sound is only one ingredient of music, I think. So, and I think back to the Brahms, this is what you're doing. You're not just producing sound. Obviously, it's nice to produce a fat sound on the C string, and then you kind of take a bath in your juicy, gorgeous cello sound, but that's not what music is about in the end of the day. I like that question by Katie Terrell, who's a cellist. She's in the RTE Orchestra in Dublin, and now she's in America. So she's the very accomplished cellist, and she wanted to know how the ethos of classical music might have repressed our creativity. And would we have explored composition, other creative aspects of performance, but we felt it would have inhibited our success as a solo artist?
I think then you will see that okay, Lachenmann gives me the possibility to create a universe without playing a single normal note, just by making sounds, by tapping the wood against the wood, by creating. So, and then it's not about this, but maybe I misunderstood her question. But what I mean to say is that in this moment, then it's not about, am I doing what's right to serve my career or to show that I play the cello right, but I am participating in this creativity, in this extraordinary creative potential that music has. And fortunately, I do think that people will respond to it. That if you propose something in this direction, people will respond to it. And that in the end you win. And that's, in a way, what I mean to say is that I think this is one variation of what we talked about the audition, not audition thing. I think this is like this. So, but maybe I misunderstood her question, but that's what I would have to say about it.
Well, I think I could... That's definitely the right, a wonderful answer. And just by seeing what you're doing, and also me, if I answer how I understood the question, I don't think both of us ever felt repressed in our creativity as we had. I think even nowadays there's more room for doing interesting things. Sometimes to the extent that interesting things get more exposure than normal. Like if you want to just play cello piano, it's like, oh, really, cello piano again? But you have to come up with a special project. If it's then it becomes more sellable. So it's almost to the point that we have to add a creative edge to be successful. If we just play our normal thing as we have done for the last 50 years, that's not even enough. So with all the good and bad things coming with it, I think it's... So I never felt repressed in my creativity. Maybe I'm not creative enough, but I think the music... And I think both of us, we were lucky enough to be able to do what we're doing. Maybe if you're entering an orchestra and then you're doing the job from 10 to 1 and then from 5 to 8, the creativity is rather limited. And if we are as freelance, I mean, you have a job as a professor, but still you're more freelance than anything. We can do whatever you want and nobody will stop us. Actually, they ask us to do more interesting stuff. The very last question, then you have to go to your kids. If we have Andreas asking how we would describe the difference in our tonal approach when we play with an orchestra versus a solo recording. I don't know now if that's only recording. She says recording, but I would even say solo concert. How would you approach that tonally different?
My first broad answer would be always first get interested for the whole picture. So if you are playing by yourself, you are going to play orchestral. You will have to, by yourself, create dimensions in sound production, in timing, to give space, because otherwise people get super bored to have this one guy or this one woman playing one instrument on the stage. So give perspective. You have to. So very often when we work on solo repertoire with my students, I tell them, look, here you have this few notes. It's one instrument. These notes should be another instrument. Give me dimension. Produce. So when you go to chamber music, have the whole picture. Be part of the whole. So if you are aware for when you play quartet, of exactly what your role is, you're going to do the right thing. And I think when you play with orchestra, it's actually the extension of this. That it's not, so I'm going to play my thing, and they have to accompany me. It's like, what is this piece as a whole, and how do my playing suggest, how do I throw this motif to the violins who take it over? How does the horn play this motif which I take over, and how can I respond to it? So really have the whole picture when you play.
But the tonal approach, is it different, or I mean, for me, I would say that the danger in tonal approach, solo versus orchestra, is in solo, people tend to forget exactly what you say, to have the full range. But with orchestra, some people only think the upper level. So I think they don't. It's important to understand we can also go much lower. The tonal approach does not have to be that different to a solo piece.
Yeah. So two things about this. The first one would be, if the alternative is, playing out all the time to make sure everything is heard, or sometimes disappear at some passages and being just on the verge of being heard, I personally, if I have to make a choice between these two things, I will choose the second one. Look in the piece that you are playing, but I think mainly by studying the score, and of course then with experience, you will realize that most of the great masterworks that we play, the composers did give us these moments where we can absolutely dim the light. Of course, it is less the case in some places, but as you mentioned, if you play really pianissimo the second theme of the Dvorak, the orchestra will give you the room. It's, in 90% of the orchestras, because they will listen, they will say, oh, where is the theme? And they will go down. One place where it's really, and I think this is very special in the Schumann Concerto, the second movement is suddenly chamber music. It's not about you, it's about a duo with the cello of the orchestra, and it's just the two of you with pizzicato accompaniment. That means very transparent, little interventions from the winds, but you can go there just as soft in the dynamic as if you were playing solo. And you can, not only you can, but I think you should. It's a love duo, this pure love between Clara and Robert, and this needs intimacy. Love doesn't need exhibition. That's something else. Nothing against exhibition, but that's something else. In this case, it's a very intimate love story. Create intimacy in your sound. And even, in pieces that have the reputation of all being about, big cello sound, I think the second theme, we were talking about second movement of Prokofiev's Sinfonia Concertante, the second theme in E major, you can play this super soft.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a complete misconception that it has to be powered through. And well, the second movement just is a different subject, and we won't go there now because we both have to attend our kids. My kid is going crazy in the kitchen. But something like the Schumann writes metronome markings, and I personally find it incredibly arrogant to completely disregard them. I think they're thought in his head, so it's not one-to-one, because one can sing them very well. The metronome markings make complete sense if you sing them. If you sit behind the cello and like the second movement, if you really play it, the speed, he says, the pizzicati can become a bit mechanic. Plop, 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 plum. It sounds... So maybe a couple of beats less, but I don't know. Again, I haven't heard many recordings, so I don't know how you do it. But are you orientating yourself a bit at the markings, or you think Rostropovich, Bernstein?
No. I highly recommend anyway. Go to the score and get inspired and try them. Not only get inspired, try the markings of the composer. Yes, sometimes the composers themselves, living composers, they will tell you, well, I'm at the table, I get excited, I write something, and I realize when the physical incarnation on the instrument arrives, it's a bit too fast. That happens, absolutely. But try to look at it and what it could have. I will give you a scoop now in advance. We recorded, and the recording should come out, I think, next month or in March, the triple concerto with Isabel Faust, Sasha Melnikov, and Freiburger Baroque Orchestra and Heras Casado. And it's going to come out soon. The slow movement. For many, many years, I had great difficulty to play Beethoven's tempo. And suddenly with the Freiburger Baroque Orchestra, it made total sense. It made total sense. So that's where you see it's interesting, the relationship between sound and tempo is really like this, and I think it works.
So I don't even know. I've never seen the metronome marking, but whenever I played the piece, I was pushing for something more fluent. I always thought all those triplets, they shouldn't be pa 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 in the piano accompaniment. It has to flow somehow. So are the markings rather quick, I guess?
Yeah, it's. I wouldn't say it's quick. It's still very calm, but it's quicker than 90% of the recordings you can find, because it's really in 3.
Yeah, exactly. So actually, you don't even need the metronome marking. You just need to look at the score. So it's not in 6 or 12. Well, thank you so much. Very interesting talking to you, and we should do that sometimes again.
My pleasure, Alban.
Are you end of February in Freiburg? Because I'll be there for 5 days.
Oh, I'll be here sometimes. Let me know, and we have to meet.
Then little wine.
Oh yes.
So nice to see you. All best.
Thank you, Alban.
Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.
Thanks, Jean-Guihen.
Be well.
Bye. You too.
Bye.